Have you ever thought about what it's like growing up in the city being totally blind? Pretty scary, huh? Well, it's actually pretty easy. Hi, I'm Romeo Edmead. I'm 30 years old, and currently I write for a magazine called Matilda Ziegler Magazine. To my left here is my friend Ray Wayne, who's an attorney who embarked on his journey to be an attorney at Harvard Law School after graduating from Harvard University for with an undergrad degree. And he works for New York City in the Human Rights Coalition.
I'm going to turn it on. Alright, it's on. I heard the poof.
Yeah, there we go.
It means it's on.
Stuff in here. They say this allegedly helps the pasta from sticking together. I don't know how true that is. It's funny, Anthony and Ray, like how many myths are out there that we follow that, like, we have no clue where they came from. Never really investigated as to whether they were accurate or not, but yet we follow them. You know what I mean? Yeah, sound good to me. And then if you lightly touch the handle, you could feel it kind of vibrating too. You know. So it's the fun part, not to let the box catch on fire. Right?
30 people have accidents. Hopefully
That's true. Hopefully we won't. See, that's the part of us that's a shame, as you know, Ray. It's like, whatever we do, if we screw up, it's because we're blind. You know, it's not just because it's human error. You know.
I had an accident during law school. I was running to
What? You peed in your pants? No, that's just being an idiot.
No, not that kind of accident. I was running to answer the phone, and I just turned too soon and hit my head on the woodwork of the, not woodwork, but on the. I was entering the living room. I was coming into the living room of my dorm, running to get the phone, and I turned too soon and hit my head on the door sill, like it's falling.
Did it sound like that?
No, not quite. And it was bleeding profusely because I just hit right under the hairline. There's a lot of blood vessels.
Yeah. No, fish ready to go. Steam at its best, isn't it? We met through an organization called the National Federation of the Blind, which has more than 50,000 members. And the National Federation of the Blind is an advocacy organization made up of blind people and that fights and promotes the rights of blind people. And Ray Wayne is the president of the New York City chapter of the National Federation of the Blind, and also its New York State scholarship chairperson. I went blind when I was 2 as a result of glaucoma basically I was born with glaucoma, and then I had a lot of trouble with my eyes the first couple years of my life, and then after that I had to have some emergency surgery that was botched, and I went blind as a result of that, and I'm totally blind, like no light perception, no colors or anything like that. But growing up was great. I lived, like every other kid. I rode bikes, I roller skated, I had a skateboard, I played tag with my friends, and all the games out in the street that you play, kick the can, hide and seek, whatever. If there were games that involved running or what have you, I would just like hold on to one of my friends, and we'd run together. And so yeah, that was I always went to public schools, and so that was that's a bit about my upbringing.
I have the same eye condition. I have congenital glaucoma, and I had some sight when I was younger in my left eye. I had a number of eye surgeries to try to control the pressure in my eyes. Because of the formation of scar tissue, I started losing my remaining sight when I was about 11, and I was totally blind by about 17. I went through the like Romeo, I went through the public schools. I was in what's called a resource class, where you spent part of the day in a resource room with a teacher who could transcribe things into Braille. I learned Braille when I was about 7. I was in the Boy Scouts. I participated in a couple of different recreation programs. The biggest problem of blindness is not the lack of sight, but the misunderstanding and misconception, and that results in blind people not having as many employment opportunities and housing opportunities and educational opportunities. It is true that we've learned to use our other senses to obtain the information that sighted people are accustomed to obtaining by sight. So often when I tell people, like I can tell the difference between the R train and the W train, because they use as it's pulling into the station, because they use a different type of train, and I can tell by the sound of the train which train it is. So even before somebody tells me what train it is, or before the conductor announces it, I know what train it is. And people are amazed when they hear that, when I say that. Or I can tell, the difference between a truck and a bus, or something like that. People are amazed that, or my dad was amazed that I could hear a moth crawling up and down a window, crawling along a window. I obtain information by sound and by touch and smell, but my hearing is no better than anybody else's. In fact, it's probably, at my age and all the loud noises I've been around, it's probably not even perfect. It's not innately better. It didn't not like, I'm not like Daredevil. My hearing didn't improve when my residual sight went.
Because we're blind, and there's multiple disabilities. We don't hear. We can't think straight. We shouldn't leave the house unless we have some kind of aid, or we can't live alone. So that's one of them.
I'm Carl Jacobson. I'm president of the National Federation of the Blind's New York State affiliate. I'm also a member of the National Board of Directors of the National Federation of the Blind. My late wife was a nurse. She was a registered nurse, and she used to work the evening shift. And one of the reasons she worked the evening shift is because we were cheap and we saved on childcare expenses. So I'd get home from work at like 5 in the afternoon. She was at work by 3, so we only needed a babysitter for like 2 hours in the afternoon instead of a whole shift like parents are forced to do today. But she was on her lunch break in the evening with several other nurses, and they're sitting around in the break room having a sandwich and just talking about whatever. And at one point, one of the other nurses said to her, "Well, do you have kids?" She says, "Uh-huh." And they're chewing their sandwiches, so they're talking to a full mouth. And that same nurse said, you said that your husband was blind, right?" She said, "Yep." Mm-hmm. She said, "Well, how did you get your kids?" And my wife paused, kind of open mouth with the pizza sandwich hanging out of her mouth. Says, like in the usual way. it's ignorance, I think, that drives me a little crazy.
I mean, there are lots of others that are much more serious and more damaging, but one of the ones that drives me nuts on an almost daily basis is that we can't go up and down stairs. I can't tell you how many times, I'm going to use Romeo as a prop, how many times I've approached I'm approaching a flight of stairs, in the subway, in my apartment building, and, someplace in public, and somebody, grabs my arm, and pulls back on my arm, and says, here's the stairs, and they're pulling back on my arm, and I'm like, you're holding me back, I can't go down, or even if I ask somebody where the stairway is, and then when we get to the stairway, and I start to go down, and they grab my arm, pull back like that. I'm like, you're pulling me back. I'm trying to run for the train's coming in, and I'm trying to run for it. And as far as giving help or offering help, the way that for sighted people to do it is to ask first. Do you need help? I mean, if I observe somebody, that I notice that seems to be struggling with a lot of groceries or trying to get something through a door or whatever, I'll ask them if they need help. But I don't just grab the wagon and presume to help them. But what happens with us a lot is people just think they know better, and I don't think this one's happened to me, but I've heard stories of people, somebody just grab your arm and just take you across the street, and that wasn't even the street that the person wanted to cross in the first place. Just ask first. I've had sighted people tell me, oh, no, I tried to help this blind person and he screamed at me, and I want to say to them, I wonder what you did. And you probably grabbed his arm and hauled him across the street, or tried to, hold him back when he was going down a flight of stairs to run for a train. I try not to say that, but I just try to point out, if you ask the person if they want help, and if they say no, I have a thing about no thank you. It's one of my pet peeves. If I say no thank you, it means no thank you. And I've had so many times, I've had to say 4 or 5 or 6 times to the same person, no thank you. And to the point where even if I realize that I probably should have accepted the help in the first place, I'm just I've already made up my mind that, no thank you. And I think that, if I yelled at them, I could understand them being angry, but I've had situations where I just keep saying no thank you, and the person keeps trying to tell me something that they think I need to know, or asking, are you sure you don't need help? You sure you don't? No thank you, no thank you. And then, that interferes with my ability to get maybe I'm trying to cross the street and I'm trying to listen to the traffic, and somebody keeps talking to me, and, I can't hear the traffic as well if people are talking to me. If someone just keeps, talking in my ear loudly, I can't hear them.
I hate when I hear this. I've heard people say, oh, watch that guy coming with that stick because he like to try to trip people, and that really drives me crazy. I pay $40 for my cane, and I'm more frustrated when somebody trips over it than they are, because if it's bent or broken or what have you, well, obviously if it's broken, then it's totally no good, and if it's bent, it's not as good. So I have to go buy another one. I don't want to trip you. Obviously I didn't know you were there. Usually I keep my cool, when I hear comments like that, and I'm just a calm person in general. But one time a guy got me to go off on him because he yelled out from a distance, why are you trying to trip that old lady, and I didn't even know that the lady was there, and I just lost it on him, so that definitely, I hate that. But I don't know how much of a stereotype that is, because you don't hear that a lot. The other things I told you about, you hear about all the time. But that definitely is something that people do think from time to time.
I'm Mindy Jacobson. I'm the first vice president of the New York State affiliate of the National Federation of the Blind, and I am also the first vice president of our New York City chapter of the National Federation of the Blind. I was in a taxi cab in Manhattan. The driver asked me if I was married, and at that time I wasn't. And his next question to me was, well, do you know how to have sex? I was appalled. And I just didn't answer him. And he said, how come you're not answering me? And he finally said, well, listen, I mean, what I'm saying is if you don't know how, I'd be glad to show you. I have to tell you, I am not at a loss for words that often. I was at a loss for words, and I finally just said, I think I'm fine, thanks. But, you know, he would never have asked that to somebody else. Listen, I don't think he would ask anybody that I know. I really don't. I don't think there's any minority that, except a disabled person, that kind of question would have come up for.
The other one is the one about, I sort of laugh at this one about us having musical ability, and I always tell people, if you think
That would actually be a good thing, though.
yeah, well, not
That would be cool.
can be
Well,
very
no, I
competitive.
guess we'd be all alike, so that would be boring.
we'd be
but,
dull. We'd be dull.
At least that's not a negative thing.
Well, no, but sometimes the positive things can be negative too, because
No,
people
you're right.
make assumptions based on that. Like they'll say, "Oh, well, why don't you just you're blind? Why don't you just become a musician? Or why don't you just become a masseuse?" That's what blind people do. Well, no, we don't. If you want to know that blind people are not necessarily musically talented, I'll give you a demonstration.
We'll pass.
Yeah, we better not.
I am wondering what the antagonism is toward disabled groups in general, but blind people even more so, that you feel fomenting in our society right now. The depictions of me on Saturday Night Live, when a staff member of mine had to leave, that the New York Post wrote an editorial, he won't be effective because now there's no one to read to him. There are 200,000 employees in the state and one person left and no one else can read to me.
Really?
I made a statement once about Ground Zero, and it was an error. It was a statement I made in error. I said, first we're going to fix the monuments and then we're going to start building. Well, we'd already started building. But instead of just writing that I made a mistake, they wrote, someone should take him to Ground Zero so he can see, or let him touch to see where the buildings are being built. Where is that anger coming from? Where is that blatant hostility coming from? And I'm not blaming the media here, because the media often just reflects the attitudes of society. And I think it's economic. I think people have been encouraged to believe that special education is eating up the education budget, that services to the disabled are eating up the Medicaid budget, and that their lives are impacted and their taxes are higher because so many disabled people have a disproportionate share of government services. My answer to them is, why don't they get on board with us? If we started creating the right workforce development, we wouldn't have 70% of blind people without jobs here in this country.